Yes, giving up trying to be good. I'm just going to do what I want now, and let the chips fall where they may. His smile faded as he explained, and a hard edge crept into his voice. You lost me again. The breathtaking crooked smile reappeared. I always say too much when I'm talking to you. That's one of the problems. Don't worry, I don't understand any of it, I said wryly. I'm counting on that. So in plain English, are we friends now? Friends, he mused dubiously. Or not, I muttered. He grinned. Well, we can try, I suppose, but I'm warning you now that I'm not a good friend for you. Behind his smile, the warning was real. You say that a lot, I noted, trying to ignore the sudden trembling in my stomach and keep my voice even. Yes, because you're not listening to me. I'm still waiting for you to believe it. If you're smart, you'll avoid me. I think you've made your opinion on the subject of my intellect clear, too. My eyes narrowed. He smiled apologetically. So as long as I'm being not smart, we'll try to be friends? I struggled to sum up the confusing exchange. That sounds about right. I looked down at my hands wrapped around the lemonade bottle, not sure what to do now. What are you thinking? He asked curiously. I looked up into his deep gold eyes, became befuddled, and as usual, blurted out the truth. I'm trying to figure out what you are. His jaw tightened. But he kept his smile in place with some effort. Are you having any luck with that? He asked in an offhand tone. Not too much, I admitted. He chuckled. What are your theories? I blushed. I had been vacillating during the last month between Bruce Wayne and Peter Parker. There was no way I was going to own up to that. Won't you tell me? He asked, tilting his head to one side with a shockingly tempting smile. I shook my head. Too embarrassing. That's really frustrating, he complained. No, I disagreed quietly, my eyes narrowing. I can't imagine that would be frustrating at all, just because someone refuses to tell you what they're thinking, even if all the while they're making cryptic little remarks specifically designed to keep you up at night wondering what they could possibly mean. Now, why would that be frustrating? He grimaced. Or better, I continued, the pent-up annoyance flowing freely now. Say that person also did a wide range of bizarre things, from saving your life under impossible circumstances one day to treating you like a pariah the next. And he never explained any of that, either, even after he promised. That also would be very non-frustrating. You've got a bit of a temper, don't you? I don't like double standards. We stared at each other unsmiling. He glanced over my shoulder, and then, unexpectedly, he snickered. What? Your boyfriend seems to think I'm being unpleasant to you. He's debating whether or not to come break up our fight. He snickered again. I don't know who you're talking about, I said frostily, but I'm sure you're wrong, anyway. I'm not, I told you. Most people are easy to read. Except me, of course. Yes, except for you. His mood shifted suddenly. His eyes turned brooding. I wonder why that is. I had to look away from the intensity of his stare. I concentrated on unscrewing the lid of my lemonade. I took a swig, staring at the table, without seeing it. Aren't you hungry? He asked, distracted. No. I didn't feel like mentioning that my stomach was already full of butterflies. You? I looked at the empty table in front of him. No, I'm not hungry. I didn't understand his expression. It looked like he was enjoying some private joke. Can you do me a favor? I asked after a second of hesitation. He was suddenly wary. That depends on what you want. It's not much, I assured him. He waited, guarded but curious. I just wondered if you could warn me beforehand the next time you decide to ignore me for my own good, just so I'm prepared. I looked at the lemonade bottle as I spoke, tracing the circle of the opening with my pinky finger. That sounds fair. He was pressing his lips together to keep from laughing when I looked up. Thanks. Then can I have one answer in return? He demanded. One. Tell me one theory. Whoops. Not that one. You didn't qualify. You just promised one answer, he reminded me. And you've broken promises yourself, I reminded him back. Just one theory. I won't laugh. Yes, you will. I was positive about that. He looked down and then glanced up at me through his long black lashes, his ochre eyes scorching. Please, he breathed. leaning toward me. I blinked, my mind going blank. Holy crow! How did he do that? What? I asked, dazed. Please tell me just one little theory. His eyes still smoldering at me. Well, bitten by a radioactive spider? Was he a hypnotist too? Or was I just a hopeless pushover? That's not very creative, he scoffed. I'm sorry, that's all I got, I said, miffed. You're not even close, he teased. No spiders? Nope. And no radioactivity? None. Dang, I sighed. Kryptonite doesn't bother me either, he chuckled. You're not supposed to laugh, remember? He struggled to compose his face. I'll figure it out eventually, I warned him. I wish you wouldn't try. He was serious again. Because what if I'm not a superhero? What if I'm the bad guy? He smiled playfully, but his eyes were impenetrable. Oh, I said as several things he'd hinted fell suddenly into place. I see. Do you? His face was abruptly severe, as if he were afraid that he'd accidentally said too much. You're dangerous, I guessed? My pulse quickened as I intuitively realized the truth of my own words. He was dangerous. He'd been trying to tell me that all along. He just looked at me, eyes full of some emotion I couldn't comprehend. But not bad, I whispered, shaking my head. No, I don't believe that you're bad. You're wrong. His voice was almost inaudible. He looked down, stealing my bottle lid, and then spinning it on its side between his fingers. I stared at him, wondering why I didn't feel afraid. He meant what he was saying. That was obvious. But I just felt anxious, on edge, and more than anything else, fascinated. The same way I always felt when I was near him. The silence lasted until I noticed that the cafeteria was almost empty. I jumped to my feet. We're going to be late. I'm not going to class today, he said, twirling the lid so fast it was just a blur. Why not? It's healthy to ditch class now and then. He smiled up at me, but his eyes were still troubled. Well, I'm going, I told him. I was far too big a coward to risk getting caught. He turned his attention back to his makeshift top. I'll see you later, then. I hesitated, torn, but then the first bell sent me hurrying out the door, with the last glance confirming that he hadn't moved a centimeter. As I half ran to class, my head was spinning faster than the bottle cap. So few questions had been answered in comparison to how many new questions had been raised. At least the rain had stopped. I was lucky. Mr. Banner wasn't in the room yet when I arrived. I settled quickly into my seat, aware that both Mike and Angela were staring at me. Mike looked resentful. Angela looked surprised and slightly awed. Mr. Banner came into the room, calling the class to order. He was juggling a few small cardboard boxes in his arms. He put them down on Mike's table, telling him to start passing them around the class. Okay, guys, I want you all to take one piece from each box, he said as he produced a pair of rubber gloves from the pocket of his lab jacket and pulled them on. The sharp sound of the gloves snapped into place against his wrists seemed ominous to me. The first should be an indicator card, he went on, grabbing a white card with 4 squares marked on it and displaying it. The second is a 4-pronged applicator. He held up something that looked like a nearly toothless hairpick. And the third is a sterile micro-lancet. He held up a small piece of blue plastic and split it open. The barb was visible from this distance, but my stomach flipped. The barb was invisible from this distance, but my stomach flipped. I'll be coming around with a dropper of water to prepare your cards, so please don't start until I get to you. He began at Mike's table, carefully putting 1 drop of water in each of the 4 squares. Then I want you to carefully prick your finger with a lancet. He grabbed Mike's hand and jabbed the spike into the tip of Mike's middle finger. Oh no, clammy moisture broke out across my forehead. Put a small drop of blood on each of the prongs, he demonstrated, squeezing Mike's finger till the blood flowed. I swallowed convulsively, my stomach heaving. And then apply it to the card. He finished, holding up the dripping red card for us to see. I closed my eyes, trying to hear through the ringing in my ears.